What's up, YouTube? Episode
92.
We're in our book. I'm glad we said that. What is it called, Nina?
Dare to Lead by Brene Brown.
Brene Brown. Brene with a B. So,
This is about the time we always point out that I always take my book jackets off and you always leave yours on.
yeah. I don't know why you do that.
Because look how much prettier this looks.
No.
It looks so much prettier.
The thing that makes me upset
it
is when
doesn't
they look,
get in my way.
they tore already.
If you don't have it, it doesn't care. It's a little dirty.
No.
This looks pretty.
Hey, YouTube, do y'all smell your books?
No, only you
I
do
do.
that.
I do that with brand new shoes too. Like when we go shoe shopping, it's an amazing smell. It's brand new.
Do you think, does the book stay?
No, it goes away.
Because mine doesn't smell like
No, it goes away. Yeah, I promise. YouTube, let us know.
So when you're like, do you go to Barnes and Noble and just like
No,
sniff
no, heck no, that'd be weird.
Okay, see, you admit it. It's a little weird.
Anyways,
I do feel like there's a weird echo or something. Can you hear it right?
check.
As long as you can hear it,
I can hear you.
then you're fine.
Right.
Don't worry about me.
Are you sure?
I don't
Right.
believe in myself.
We still haven't even tried the one that I had from a long time ago. So, anyways, YouTube episode 92, the podcast equipment. that thing. Go buy the book, Brene Brown. Dare to lead, not dare to move.
Dare
All right.
you to
No.
move.
All right, here we go. Check. Are we sure?
Yeah, we're good.
All right, check. I didn't write the intro this time.
You don't remember it?
Land the plane. Here we go. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Made for More Consulting podcast. Mario here. We are on episode 92 with our book, Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. And just so you know, this is a podcast with the intentions of building leaders and personal development inside each one of us so that in turn, we can pass that on to the people we lead, the people that are around us, because what you don't have, you can't pass on. So all about leadership, all about personal development and growing. Adina, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
Jamie's here. I don't know if Sam's out there, but Jamie's behind the camera. She's waving. Really quick, we're going to start off with a question. If you are listening to this, please write in or somehow comment or send us a message. Do you smell your books?
We're gonna do it right there. When you get a brand new book, do you pick it up, hold it to your face,
Yeah.
and fan
I
the
love the
pages
smell of a new book.
to smell the book?
And
Okay, but here's the
shoes,
thing with you
shoes.
is that you smell all your books. Like if you pick a book up like out of your backpack or off the table, it's like you smell it just to see if you can get that same high.
Yeah, because
Like,
it's
just-
not a high. So I don't get high off smelling books, guys. It just smells really good.
It does not.
It's the new, and like vinyl, like when we used to put up vinyl signs for Finish Line and Nike,
You
I
let
would,
that smell
yeah,
too.
I'd be the first one to open up the lid. And, yeah, that stuff can get you sick. But what's your favorite smell?
I don't know.
Like some people like gasoline.
Oh no, like what's your favorite weird smell?
Yeah.
I mean, because like I'm like, well,
Like
I
exhaust.
No, I do like a good like Mark's Law or Sharpie, like that smell. I do like that smell. I do. I mean, like the chemically.
Yeah.
I don't really like gas. I have a friend who loves the smell of skunk. Like,
That's weird.
loves it.
That's interesting.
I know.
When I got arrested in I can't remember, a guy got thrown into the tank next to us, because he couldn't control himself because he had markers and spray paint, like
All
he
over his
had
hands.
all over his hands, and he
Yeah.
kept smelling. He was yelling, hitting the walls, but
Yeah, no. I just
yeah, shoes also smell really good when they first come into a store. So, anyways, that's that's the beginning of episode 92. We're glad you guys are here. Glad you guys are listening. Etienne is out. We are recording at a different time. She is working hard creating t-shirts. So I did get to see that she created a t-shirt. I think it was Dripping Springs or somewhere. They asked her to hand draw something. She hand drew it, and they said that's the logo. So if you ever need logos, if you ever need graphic design, Etienne is your
she's
girl.
so good.
All right, so we are going to go into this first part. It's called, I hate this word, Rumbling with Vulnerability. Section 1, the moment and the myths is what we're going to be talking about. Just so you guys know, we don't read the entire book. We are going to pick out sections, and I want to make sure that yeah, as we read that, we kind of break these parts up. These chapters are pretty big, so we're going to make sure we just cover this one section. And what else? Anything else that we're missing before we go on?
No, I'm ready to go.
All right, let's do this. So she starts the chapter off with her definition of vulnerability. She says the definition of vulnerability as the emotion that we experience during times of uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. She also says it is having the courage to show up when you can't control the outcome.
So I really liked that part of it.
Yeah.
Because I think that so often we don't associate vulnerability with showing up when you don't know how it's going to turn out.
Yeah,
Or
I never thought of it that way.
I know. I just listened to this girl talk about failure, and she talked about how all the time when she was growing up that her dad would ask her, how did you fail today? How did you fail today? And it was, so they got to the point where they were trying to find things that they failed at because he was trying to reframe what failure looked like, what vulnerability looked like, to make it not scary.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was like, I really like that. I like the idea of because most of the time you wait for somebody to fail and then they fall apart and you're trying to like put them back together instead of calling it out ahead of time and seeing it as a positive thing because you tried something new, you did something different. It's almost like we try to rationalize failure in a positive way after it happens.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you're just trying to make me feel better.
But if you think about what she said, the courage to show up when you can't control the outcome, there's not a lot of things we can control once we leave the house. I mean, going to work, we don't know if people are going to show up, but I think if you begin to build that in your head and go, man, I took a risk today. Like some people may not even think that.
But
think
even taking on like a new project, like whatever it is.
Yeah.
So many times you do all these calculated risk and these assessments and all this, you plan and you lay it out, all to set yourself so you can't fail.
Mm-hmm.
So that is that being vulnerable. If you really are like, we really can't fail in this.
Yeah.
You know, if we do steps 1, 2, and 3, we got this.
There's and I think one of the reasons I'm reading this together with you and everybody else is because Stephanie Crinkey told us, she talked to me about imposter syndrome, like because you don't want to believe in yourself, you feel like you're going to be found out or something, even when you have the confidence, you're there. And there's a Longhorn, former Longhorn trainer, and he put out a video this week that just went viral. And he's a trainer here in Cedar Park and in Austin. He trains NFL athletes. And he talked about imposter syndrome, saying anytime you take the next step, like you said, next goal, next big project, you're going to face those same demons or voices, is what he said, that were with you before you got to this level. Remember, like level 1, those imposter syndrome voices were level 2, level 3, level 4. But he went into the 6 P's, piss poor performance, or prior proper planning prevents piss poor performance. And he goes into going, the reason that you're going to succeed is that you're getting ready for the next level by preparing. If you don't prepare, then you get piss poor performance. And that's like a military thing, but there's a lot of athletes that use it. So anyways, I think that the way she said showing up when you can't control the outcome is very cool. So with talking about vulnerability, Adina, what is an event or a time for you that you feel like this is a vulnerable state for us? Your family, whatever.
You know, it's funny because I, like, looking back, I don't remember feeling like this, but on this side of it, I mean, I think it was probably when we started foster care.
Yeah.
You know, because we really had no idea what we were getting into, and
neither did anyone else.
Good gracious,
I was
we
like,
had some
she's
rough kids.
I was like, she's fostering?
Oh yeah. And so I think like in that, like truly not knowing the outcome of it, every single situation you go into, it really does put you in a different space because you cannot control any of it. Nothing is in your control because you have this state that has so much say so in what's going on. Then you have this unpredictable child, you know, and then
that probably has trauma.
Oh, they all have trauma. And then you have just the whole other piece of it, which is just you're changing your family dynamic, you know, and so nothing in that time period, you can't control any of that. So I look back and I think, wow, yeah, that was a very vulnerable time for us in what was going on and how we had tried to navigate every single bit of it. And I mean, there's no hiding behind foster care. Like, it just is what it is.
Yeah, and then the fact that Darren went through coaching changes, some stupid things that happened, you know, but a lot of crap hit the fan all at once. And I wonder if people could look back at areas like what you just said, it's not, I didn't think of it as vulnerable, but if they look back at their lives and go, man, that was based on this definition.
Or even like the opposite. I think now that I know this definition, I think when you go into things, you can go into it with a different mindset. That when you, like using the fostering example, when you bring people into that with you, and like you're allowing them into those parts of your life and how that is a vulnerable place. And so the opposite, when you're going into something new, you can almost use that to say, I'm going to strengthen these relationships by allowing these people in. And also realize if I'm not allowing people in during a vulnerable state, why is that? Probably because you feel vulnerable. You know? And you're like, nope, not letting anybody in.
And it's like those people, I mean, it's like any of us that have been hurt, where at some point you just gotta learn to get back to, it's the definition in here that she says about love. Like, C.S. Lewis. Yeah. Living is loving, and if you don't, then at the end of your life, you're gonna go, what have I done? Live a selfish life. Yes. And it's crazy. Yeah. I think for us, for me and Jamie, I think, or for me for sure, is 14 years on the staff and then stepping out and just going, man, I may not be successful.
Yeah, for
as
sure.
You get to that point, but then we got to keep going. So, anyways, there's some examples. I thought these were really good examples. I think on page 20, he says, or she says, I'm sorry, directly appeared. She said, the first date after my divorce, talking about race with my team, trying to get pregnant after her second miscarriage, starting my own business, watching my child leave for college, apologizing to a colleague about how I spoke to him or her in a meeting, sending my son to orchestra practice, knowing how badly he wants to make first chair, knowing there's really a good chance he will not make the orchestra at all, waiting for the doctor to call back, getting feedback, getting fired, or firing someone. I think that pretty much narrows it down to a lot of us that are listening right now going, I mean, anyway, we gave blood like a month ago, and we're waiting to get these results back, and I'm in the back of my head, I'm going, I'm scared to death. But everything came back, I think, good. So, but again, I'm scared, and then giving feedback for me is another one to go. I had to practice what she says in the next chapter. We'll get next time, but to go, I got to be direct. Like, I'm about to have a direct conversation with someone that I respect, but they're just not performing well, and it's not going to go good. Or in my head, I'm saying that, but being vulnerable to go, hey, we need to have a seat. Let's get to it.
Well, I think being vulnerable is also going into that without trying to put all these guardrails and stuff around it. Like if you're going to walk into that conversation, vulnerability is I'm going to walk in and have an honest conversation with you. We're going to rumble, as she says.
I hate that word. God, I hate that word.
But I think when you're not vulnerable is when you go in and you try to, I'm going to use the word manipulate because we use that word a lot, manipulate their reaction to what you're saying instead of just saying it.
Yeah, and it goes into what we're about to say right now. It says if there's one thing that keeps us from being vulnerable, it's almost what you said, what people think about us. What are they going to say? What are their opinions? I think that might be, one of the things when you said foster care, some of us on the outside were like, man, they're fostering. And then you went to adoption, and I was like, oh crap. And so the people do probably ask, what are you thinking, or their opinions.
For sure. Or like in that situation, they'll say like, oh, I could never, which is another way of saying, what the heck are you thinking?
Yeah.
I'll
never forget when we say those words, what the heck are you thinking? I'll never forget when Sal came home from Virginia from college, and he said, hey man, I think I'm going to join the Navy. And I was like, bro, are you stupid? 9/11 had just happened. I was like, are you dumb? And I'm thinking Navy is the safest thing, but he's like, no, I think I'm going to join the SEALs. I was like, there's no way you're going to make this. And it was. I
am just for sure that you have to say those exact words to him.
I think
motivate, inspire, and encourage was not part of your vocabulary back then.
It was more like, what the heck are you thinking, dude? I don't want you to get hurt, but he did. So yeah, and then there's people here right now listening. If you're in that state of maybe I'm afraid of what people are thinking, or you're hearing the criticism, I wonder if that's a way to know that you're being vulnerable. They're just uncomfortable with you being vulnerable because they're not.
I thought of an example, I think, that is one thing for vulnerability is that when people ask for help, for a lot of people, that is a state of vulnerability. Because I think about that, like, what do people think of us? I mean, when you're reading that, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
is, I think that's a really basic one. If you are somebody who doesn't like to ask for help, is afraid to ask for help, you really have to examine that, because that it might come from the idea that you don't know how they're going to respond. So, I can't control that. Or what are they going to think of me? Whatever it is, And so I think that is a really basic, like, there's a lot of things that you can talk about being vulnerable. But in your day-to-day life, if you struggle with asking for help or accepting help, then that's where you might look at this chapter about vulnerability and the midst of vulnerability under a different umbrella.
Yeah, and I think one thing I'm writing down for later is, if you're that leader that someone comes to and they open up their heart to you, or they share some vulnerability, hey, I may need some help with this. And in my mind, it's like when Sal said, hey, I think I'm gonna become a SEAL. Instead of saying, what the heck are you thinking? Remember that your response can shut down that vulnerability, or it can accept it, embrace it, and they can go. It's that armor, what she talks about, taking the armor off. So that's good. This next part, I think we're definitely gonna put this in the action steps. She has this thing called a
Square Squad.
Square Squad. God, I hope she doesn't listen to this.
Normally we're like, please let the author listen. Now we're like, let's not have you listen.
Square Squad. Wow. Be careful how you say that. So anyway, she has a square squad. So she takes a paper 1 inch by 1 inch, and she writes down people's names of opinions that matter. So she said, then take 10 minutes to reach out and thank them. Said, like today, I just messaged some people and said, hey, I'm going to practice this. Whether they were people that have helped us on this coaching journey, some of my friends, people that work with us, I just want to say thank you. So that's going to be an action step, is why do we find, who is it that right now you can go, their opinions matter to me? And I think it's because of what she had said earlier, is the voices of everyone else are so loud that it's so easy to listen to everyone.
Well, oftentimes what you just said, we listen to the loudest voice, not the most important one. And that's what she's getting to, is write down the people that matter, and that's who you listen to.
Yeah.
That's the people that, like, I don't know if it was in here, but somewhere else I read where they say, like, if you wouldn't ask them for their advice, don't listen to their criticism.
Yeah, that's when she started cussing. Like,
is that what in here?
Remember, because she talks about how, and I think it's an amazing story or quote that she goes off of. It's the whole Theodore Roosevelt quote about, if they're sitting in the bleachers in the stands and you're in the nosebleed sections, don't give me your freaking criticism, because I'm the one that's in the arena fighting. And she's saying, don't listen to everybody's freaking criticism. And it's just like athletes or anyone today. You get up to teach something, and someone's like, well, hey, here's what you need to work on. Don't tell me what I need to work on. I'm not asking for your freaking criticism. And one of the things that we've talked about before on here is, how do you handle criticism? I think the closer they are to you, listen. Is there any truth to it? Apply it and say, cool, thank you. If there's not, if they are someone who doesn't even know you and they go, hey, let me tell you something about what I think, you can tell me, but I'm not going to apply it. So, but I think that's easier said than done. But this 1 inch by 1 inch paper, I mean, I thought of people, I think I could think of maybe 8 to 10 people that I'd go, these are some people that I'd listen to.
That's only like that big, right?
I guess.
1 inch by 1 inch?
Right here.
Yeah, that's not a very big piece of paper. Like, literally, it's like that big.
Yeah, that's her
whole point. How many people can you possibly fit on your square squad? With your handwriting, you could probably fit more than the average person.
Yeah,
but
maybe that's her square squad.
But that's the point. It is a small number of people, but their opinions really matter to you.
Even if it's a boss that you've worked for forever and there's never been trust, that doesn't mean that their voice should be that loud. And I think that's I know that's one of the reasons Made for More exists, and the way we work together, Jamie and Tiana and the people we work with, is because we see so much value in people that we go, you can do so much more. Don't allow a circumstance, a person, a situation, an event hold you back, because we see so much more. And a lot of the times it's a voice that...
It's something from your past, or for sure.
Yeah. So she's going to talk about 6 myths, and we'll go through these in one, then we'll wrap up. It's 6 myths of vulnerability. And some of these are common sense, and I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, the first one says vulnerability is a weakness. That's so interesting, because I was trying to figure out, like, where did that come from, and like, how do you wrap your mind around that? You know, I think about it like, is it like an old school, like, kind of like the boys don't cry, you know, thing? But if you read her definition of vulnerability, it's completely different. You know,
Yeah,
and
I
so
guess.
that's where I'm like, entering into a situation that you don't know the outcome.
Yeah.
Well, okay, if you said we do that every day, so I feel like this is just a common one that she's just trying to say.
Yeah, and with you saying the whole boys don't cry, whatever, some of these, I think, like, this is where my dumb mind goes, is to going, is she just trying to talk to men here, and that's just who she is? Do you see what I'm saying? Because later on when you hear her, I'm like, come on, really? Mm-hmm. Anyways, and I'm just having a difficult time with some of the parts of this book. But again, vulnerability is weakness, and really the last book that we read, Trust and Inspire, we all know, and if you didn't, go back and listen to the podcasts that cover Stephen Covey's Trust and Inspire, because vulnerability, if anything, opens up some of the things that you wouldn't really share. Again, you share them with people so that you're not hiding anything, but two, you're showing them that you're human, and that's not a weakness at all. That's just saying, hey, I'm in the same boat as you are.
Well, and she's going to talk about it a little bit later, but she also talks about how, like, vulnerability is not like sharing everything.
Exactly.
And
with everyone.
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's what she talks about. It's, you know, and I like how she kind of helps define that, because I think vulnerability has this very, like, emotional, you know, tie to it. And I do like how she defines it kind of in a little bit different of a way.
The marble.
Yes.
We're going to have to talk about that in a second.
Yeah,
I like that.
I don't remember where that's somewhere in here.
It's towards the end, yeah. Marble exercise.
Yes, that is number 5.
Okay, so we'll make sure we talk about that. So myth number 1, vulnerability is a weakness. We know that's a myth. Number 2.
I don't do vulnerability.
Oh my gosh. Those, again, that goes back to
Yes.
Hey, I'm a 8 or 6.
That's
so
what I was going to say.
me
That's what that reminds me of.
Yes.
Is this
I
is
don't
just
like people.
who I am.
Yeah, I don't like, you put yourself in a box. So really, you're the one that is creating this myth because you're putting yourself in a box. So don't show up to a meeting with a superior or people that work for you and go, that just doesn't work for me.
But I think it's different if you come out to say, like, I'm not comfortable with vulnerability. Like, I haven't experienced it enough.
Yes.
Or like she talks about creating a safe place in somewhere in here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I know.
But she does. And
Yeah.
so, like, but if you haven't experienced vulnerability in a safe setting, then you could say, I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah, or here's my experience when I tried to.
Yes.
Like, don't be vague. Because if you just say, I don't do vulnerability, to me, you just played all your cards, and I'm going, okay, I know what type of leader you are.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah. Number 3.
I can do it alone.
So I put Adina, how do you battle against a lone mentality, because we all sometimes want to do things alone?
Well, this is probably one of my biggest ones, because it's not that I like to do things alone.
You just want to get things done.
I like to do things with people who move fast. Efficiently get things done, with a lot of intention behind it. And so that is probably where I struggle is in that. Is if I'm doing it alone, it's because I don't want to be vulnerable with you, because I don't trust. I mean, it kind of goes back to, I don't know what the outcome's going to be, and I don't usually think it's going to be a positive outcome. So I'm like, no, let's go. You know?
And that's your personality, but then your personality also on the other side is if you're doing something, if you're working on a project, because I've seen you work on projects where you'll come in and go, hey, tell me what you think about this. So you're getting input, right?
I believe in input, yes.
But sometimes you're just going, hey, I got this, I'm just going to get it done.
Well, and I like to do things with people if I believe it will bring out their strengths or their potential. I love to give people the opportunity to do those things.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty rare that I'm just going to do this by myself, but it does happen.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think as leaders and as people, we got to remember, she says this, we're hardwired for connection from our mirror neurons to language. We are social species. In the absence of authentic connection, we suffer. And by authentic, I mean the kind of connection that doesn't require hustling for acceptance and changing who we are to fit in. So meaning, if we all come to the table, I don't have to feel like I have to change who I am so I can fit in. Again, she's telling you, you don't have to change to be alone. You don't have to do things alone to go, no one's gonna accept me. You should be able to show up and say, hey, I am made to need connection and community. and show up the way you
Well,
are.
and I think that probably, like with that, is I may do things alone, but I'm really good at connecting
Yeah.
in other ways with people.
Yeah, you're right. I can agree with that. Number 4.
You can engineer the uncertainty of discomfort out of vulnerability.
Yeah, and she said I'm talking about relational vulnerability, not systematic.
I think this is the one where she was talking about the safe space. Can't remember.
Yeah, there's an example that I want to read here in a second, but I don't think it's this one. So she's saying you can engineer. Yeah, she said I'm talking about relational vulnerability, not systemic vulnerability. I'm trying to think. There's one that she uses a really good example. But anyways, yeah.
Obviously, that's not a myth that we struggle with.
I don't think it's Number 5.
Trust comes before vulnerability.
Okay, so this is the one.
That?
Yeah.
Okay, what's interesting
That's
is
a myth.
That's a myth.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be one that I would almost guarantee you there are leadership people that write the opposite, that say the opposite
Mm-hmm.
with your team.
Yeah.
You know, is that you have to build up trust before somebody's vulnerable. And it's the exact thing that with the exact example she's going to use with the marble jar.
Yeah.
You know, like we look at it like we are going to, the people that we've given the marbles to that we trust, those people are going to be vulnerable with. And so it's a
And
different.
she just says the exercise we do with groups was interesting, where they give a group of people this fill in the blank. So when they first come in, one of the fill in the blanks they do, and we'd love to do this with maybe on our social media, is I grew up believing that vulnerability is blank. And she just said that it went like all the answers just were all over the place. She said, I'll never forget a sticky note that someone shared a couple of years ago. It said, I grew up believing vulnerability is the first step to betrayal.
I was like, dang.
That was crazy. But you think about what these, at some point, kids went through, maybe adults went through, and most people think that when they're vulnerable, again, they think of maybe a hurt or a fear that's happened in their lives, and it always goes back to hurt. But she said, again, trust comes before vulnerability is a myth.
Right. What she's saying is, like, the statement that she says is, she says we need to trust to be vulnerable, and we need to be vulnerable in order to build trust.
Yep.
And so
the Marble Project.
Yeah, totally.
She, I thought that was really good, because her daughter came home crying, and she said that the teacher had given the class, had dumped out half of the marbles, and she was like, "What are you talking about?" Well, when someone does something good for someone, they put a marble in the jar. That means you're building trust. Little things, opening the door, saying thank you, being a friend to someone. Well, then they made fun of her, and all the students started laughing at her. And what did the teacher do? She poured out all the marbles, because she's telling the other students, you just broke trust. You just broke vulnerability with this little girl because you're making fun of her. And so she goes on to talk about the fact that when she starts talking about her daughter about, hey, how do your best friends build trust with you? Her daughter, like, again, it made this.
Yeah, she went through well, my one friend asked me how my day was when I was sitting on the park bench. Like they were small things, and that.
The other friend remembered my grandparents'
Yes.
names, and she was like,
Yes.
Why does that make you feel like you should give them a marble? She said, because they remember the small things.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that goes on to what we were saying is, anytime there's every trust is built through generosity, kindness, or helping. You put a marble in the jar. Anytime meanness, disrespect, or lack of trust, the marble comes out. But she's talking about the small little moments in life that build this up.
And we've talked about this several times on different podcasts. We've called it different things: pocket change.
Exactly.
There was another thing we called it, something of influence. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
But they all have different names.
It builds.
But
It's
that is what it's saying.
Yes.
She uses the marble, and I do think that as a leader, that is so true. That you gain so many more marbles in the small things. You know, we have used the example like remembering your people's dog's name, or asking them how their kids are, you know, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there are ways to advance that. I think that, like, one of the things we've talked about is like show up for people.
Yeah.
And I think when you show up, you gain more marbles. So definitely it's the same concept we've talked about multiple
Just
times
different
over
names,
the last 2 years.
Yeah, she says this, and I think I want to read it. It's on page 32. It says, "I tell you this story because I had always assumed that trust is earned in big moments and through really grand gestures, not more simple things like friends remembering small details in your life." And then towards the end, it says, "It turns out that trust is in fact earned in the smallest of moments. It is earned not through heroic deeds or even highly visible actions, but through paying attention, listening, gestures of genuine care and connection." And again, it goes back to connection to you and your people.
Yeah.
How do you know your people? How well do you know your people? How well do you know your colleagues? And I think there's some people that I think that for me, it comes down to people that I didn't think I'd have that connection with, because maybe they're not the, I don't know, I think of like Undercover Boss and things like that, where it's not so much the general manager or the owner, it's the busser or the waitress that you go, these guys have always been overlooked. So take some time, stop and ask them, how's your day going, or whatever. So
Yeah. Connect with them.
Exactly. So vulnerability.
Go ahead. If I were to stop right here and ask you, go ahead and ask me. I'm
There
ready.
you go. Adina, how do people build trust with you in small ways that adds up? So how do people build pocket change with you?
Oh, good gracious. That is a terrible I don't know, maybe I should have you answer that about me. I don't know.
How do people build trust with you?
Yeah. You know what's weird?
I got a couple, but go ahead.
I feel like I'm like anti, like what they said, like the remembering things. I don't know if that is like what builds trust to me, you know.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think because I want to have high expectations of people, but I also know that like for you, you were good at that, you know. And so so like there are other people in my life. I'm pointing at your wife, not that into her, but there are other people.
Yeah.
that's not their strength. I have one friend who she would send me a card for every freaking birthday, anniversary. I mean, like that was her love language, you know.
Yeah.
And so for her, I knew that what she was giving, I was building a relationship and a connection with her because I knew that she was extending herself.
Yeah.
You know. And so, but like just because Jamie has never sent me a birthday card doesn't mean that I have there's less trust or less connection. So I think it's built different with.
So you got to know your team.
You have to know your team. Everybody is different.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think part of mine would be like in a work relationship is when you notice that I did something that nobody else could do or nobody else, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, like 90% of the things that happen, like anybody can do them. Yeah. And I do not like inauthentic praise. It drives me insane.
I'm laughing because you also hate when someone takes your idea.
Oh, I do. But
and someone says, "Hey,
just smiling on.
I came up with this grand plan, and
I'm like, actually, I just told you that in the office a few minutes ago, but that's okay. Go ahead. You just worked that out.
But I also think that people build pocket change with you when they show up. Like if you have a project and there's somebody that's going to work with you, they show up, they take it. And the biggest one I think is initiative. Don't make me tell you what you have to do, but they go above and beyond for the customer or consumer or whatever. But they're on your team, and you go, hey, that's why I trusted them. That's why they're here.
Yes. Yeah. If you prove that right, like that, if I see that potential and you live up to that.
There's one person that's coming to mind. I don't know if I can say her name, but what's BJ's wife's name?
Tiffany.
That's the.
Was I not supposed to say her name?
Tiffany,
I was like,
Tiffany Hall. Tiffany Hall. I mean,
her.
That one project you did with all these new people, and she was new, and when she ran with it, she took so the initiative is a big thing, I think, for you. So.
Yes, and I think that is a big way for trust with that is doing what you said that you were going to do is probably now that you say all that, I'm like, that's probably what it is.
I think mine is just making sure you show up if you tell me.
And don't be late.
Don't be late, and man, do not be late. Please don't. We talked about that today with someone that scheduled to be with me 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And I said, I'll be here at 8:30. Your time to be here is at 9:30, a whole hour. And 10:30 came around and they weren't there yet. And I said, hey, bro, I'm out. So,
well, yeah, but then when I get here early, you're like, you're early. Well, yes, I'm early because early's on time.
So anyways, that one was really good. Trust comes before vulnerability is a myth. But if you're a leader, just keep in mind the small things you can do to build trust with your team. And knowing that the same way you build trust or vulnerability with someone is not the same way all the time with everyone. And I guess if you're an employee and you're leading up, remember that your boss may not have the same vulnerable or trust connection with
I
you.
thought of another one, but I don't know how to, like, I think also one thing is I'm really good at seeing when people are trying to artificially build trust.
She talks
Like,
about that.
well, yeah, like the example, like
Fake.
let's use asking if your kid is sick, like because one of my kids was sick, and that is one thing I have noticed about that is that sometimes that there are people who I know that is not their nature, that is not their tendency. They could care less if my kid was sick. They would never think about it any other time, but they'll ask out of like obligation, not out of like true concern.
Yeah.
But then I think I have people in my life who are like, oh hey, like I just thought about it. How is she?
Yeah.
And they really want to know. It's a whole different, like
That's tough.
I'm pouring marbles out of the jar
Yeah.
if I feel like you're not being authentic.
Yeah, you lose more because you're
Oh,
fake.
yeah.
And I think that the biggest one is when you get a text from someone that you haven't heard from in a while, and in the back of my head I'm going, what do you need? Just start off with
what did
what
you
you
see
need.
on Facebook?
Yeah, what do you need? Like, what do you need from me? Like, what is it
Yeah.
why are you texting me? And it shouldn't be that way, but that just means you have no capital, no marbles, no pocket change with that person. And that's what we have to understand as leaders and as people is, I can't just go into this relationship or, I can't just jump in going, hey, I need you to do something for me. So anyways, don't be fake.
Don't be fake.
And the last one, number 6,
Vulnerability is disclosure.
that's a myth.
Yes, this is the one I think I was.
Yeah.
This was what I think is the biggest myth.
I think
to
it's.
me.
I think she explained it really well. Basically, this one it came down to there's a line between vulnerability and just and telling everyone, hey, here's all my baggage, here's all my junk that I've been carrying. There's certain people should know, and there's a time and place when people should know.
Okay, so I thought a lot about this. So for some reason, people feel like they can tell me anything. Like I'll be at a car wash, I'll be at a restaurant, I'll be getting my nails done, the guy telling me he's having an affair on. And I'm like, don't tell me this. I don't want to know you're. I mean, like, come on now. You know?
Yeah.
But I'm thinking like in that moment because I don't have a relationship with him, and he's telling me all this like stuff. I feel like I just happened to sit down at the right time. But in that moment, I don't feel like he's being vulnerable with me. Because there's really no risk because I don't know him, I don't know his what. Same thing with the car wash or the restaurant,
no trust or anything,
whatever. So that's where I'm like, vulnerability is disclosure is a huge myth because you can disclose all this stuff and it's not really being vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's different when you are in a relationship with somebody or you're in a position where you're sharing something that you have to trust them because they are involved in your life in some way.
Yeah, and it's, you're about to share some things that could. It could either hurt or you're just vulnerable.
Yes.
I remember a student actually sharing some things with me and some leaders one year, and then he went on and posted on Facebook and never came back because we accepted him. Right time, right place with leaders because it was a safe place. But then he posted it on Facebook for his mom, his dad, his friends, and then he got upset because he felt like, hey, I didn't get the same acceptance that these adults gave me. There's a time and place to be vulnerable. There's a time and place to go, this probably isn't. Putting things on Facebook, personally, and I'm just going to tell you from the professional side, there's people looking at your social media to see if you want to be hired or not.
Well, I think Facebook is great for giving information. You know what I mean? Like because I think about how like we do use Facebook a lot for updating things and giving information when things are going on in your life. That I totally get it. But like in that situation, like I think there's got to be some myth with that. Like you don't put out something. You know, like I'm getting married next week is a great thing to share on Facebook.
And it's just interesting. But this whole thing about vulnerability and disclosure, the example in 35, I think this is the way that I think the one part that I did agree is the way this leader says it. So she puts an example of there's difficult change coming up and there's uncertainty in times, and she says this. She says, this is a leader talking to the team. These changes are coming in hard and fast, and I know there's a lot of anxiety. I'm feeling it too, and it's hard to work through. It's hard not to take it home.
It's hard not to worry, and it's easy to want to look for someone to blame. I will share everything I can about the changes with you as soon as I can.
I want to spend the next 45 minutes rumbling on how we're all managing changes. Specifically, what does support look like from me look like? What questions can I answer? Are there any stories you want to check out with me? And are there any questions that you may have? So basically, the leader's coming in going, I'm being vulnerable just like you. Let me tell you, there is angst, anxiety.
Right. What she did also is if it was her, is she had empathy. She put herself in their place and said, like, I know this is gonna be hard. I know it's gonna cause you anxiety. I know you're gonna take it home at night. I know, like, I have thought through this. I put myself in your place, and I am identifying with you instead of just saying, here they come. What do you want to know?
Yeah. And she didn't just say, hey, we're losing money, we're bleeding money.
Yeah.
We may not be we may not have a job in the next couple of weeks. No, she's like, hey, there's changes coming.
So one thing I think I learned, like, I think we try to, like, what do you learn from this and what? Because I always try to take something away from. I don't do this, for my health. I'm just kidding. But what the question is, I think, how can I support you is one I think I've asked for a long time. Like, how can I support you? What does support look like? What do you need from me? How can I help you? But the one I liked were, are there any stories you want to check with me? Because I feel like so many times there's all this stuff that's going on, and I'm giving you the opportunity to say, hey, this is what I heard, and I just need to know if it's true.
Yeah.
Or this is what I think, and I just need to know if it's true.
That's good.
It opens the door to a different set of questions.
Yeah, and as a leader, you go, oh wow, they're trusting by telling me what they've heard, but then they want to know the truth.
Because I'm thinking, for me, if I was going to walk into somebody's office and say, hey, I heard this and I need to know if it's true, if I don't have a high level of trust, that's a hard door to open.
Yeah, that is.
But if they open the door, I can walk right through it.
Yeah, so as a leader, man, do you have that open door for your people to walk in and say that? She says, show me a culture in which vulnerability is framed as weakness, and I'll show you a culture struggling to come up with fresh ideas and new perspectives. And again, she's talking about just as a team, is there trust, is there vulnerability? One of the things I didn't agree with, man, I keep burping.
It's that new spark.
Yeah, but then I have a bunch of phlegm from being sick. I should do an ASMR on that. I didn't agree. I don't agree, and maybe I need to learn something from her. But the fact that someone they disagreed with her on something, or they told her something, and she said she leaves. She leaves for the day, 24 hours, or they leave and they come back and then they freaking rumble. I hate that word. But they say, hey, here's the vulnerable moment. I don't agree with this, I don't agree with that. And then she says she takes like 24 hours or a week, and then they come back and revisit. And I'm like, why not just have the freaking conversation right
But I think that is an excellent idea, because I can even use an example. Same thing, like somebody called me in, we had a conversation, and in that moment, it didn't feel right, but I couldn't really figure out, like, what they were saying kind of made sense, but I didn't feel right. I was like, but I needed a minute to process it. Well, 24 hours later, I was able to go back in and say, actually, and I could give some better, like, examples, some times, some other things that had happened, and so that part I could see. I think it's kind of like saying, hey, can we talk later? And you're like, oh heck,
please don't do that with me. That's my pet peeve.
But if you said, hey, can we talk about this, and this, then you can, like, mentally prepare for it. And I think all they're saying in that is that give somebody time to process it, so you can both come back, and when you come back 24 hours later, hopefully, if there was any defensiveness that was going to happen, you have been able to pull that down. You've been able to think through it, because I think more often, and in that situation, the person I had the conversation with, they had already thought through everything. They had been thinking about it. They had had days to talk about it, you know. And then here I was, just getting it, like, almost like, boom, here you go. Okay, I need a minute, people.
Okay, I can see that.
That's my only. That's my only thing with that.
Interesting. Okay, no, that's good. I think that's good. So before we wrap up and close this, let's do something different real quick. Let me see where we're at real quick.
It's been a long one.
Yeah. So let's answer two questions real quick. How do we become an individual who leads from vulnerability to build trust with the individuals around him or her? So how do we build vulnerability? How do we become that leader, individual?
Well, I think that it goes back to kind of what we said. I think each person is a different with.
To know your team.
You have to know your team. And like we said, it's the small things, you know? And I think it's also when you come to a situation like that you share, like, I'm not real sure how this is going to turn out. Like, maybe I've created a plan, maybe we've done this, but I'm not real sure how this is going to work out.
I think it sounds weird that you can't just give your marbles away. I don't know why. It sounds weird. But think about it. As a guy, if I'm going to get to know someone, I'm going to go eat wings with them. We're going to talk about sports.
That's all relational.
Exactly. And it's not, you can't win vulnerability and trust overnight. It's going to be, you can lose it overnight.
Marble by marble.
Yes. And so for me, it's going, if you want to build trust, it's the small things. If you're the leader, hey, let me take a couple of these guys out to lunch. And let's just, hey, no talking about work. Let's talk about what's going on. If you have a favorite team, whatever. Just build small little wins that, again, you start to build pocket change over time.
For sure.
How do we lead our teams and organizations from a vulnerable state to build trust and teamwork? I think as a leader, it starts with you. You have to be vulnerable.
For sure.
You're gonna have to lead the way. It's just like Stephen Covey said. The leader's gonna have to lead from the front to go, this makes me nervous. I'm not used to this, but we're gonna have some tough conversations, and I'll start with.
Well, I thought it was interesting in her when you read that like list of times. It was being fired and firing someone.
Yeah.
And so I think as a leader, it's being willing to have those hard conversations when you don't know how they're going to turn out.
Yeah.
I think that is a big one.
Yeah, and I think practical things is practice. I mean, they call it role playing when you're going through training in any of these retail things, but that goes a long way if you just go, hey, this is what I'm going to say. Here's other ways to say it. Here's ways to bring it up. So think through those things. We do have some action steps. We'll put in the notes. I want to hear some of the words or some of the answers. I grew up believing vulnerability is.
Yeah, I mean, my first one is like emotion. But those
Yeah, I think mine was that first one, which is weakness or like weird. Answer this question: are you creating a healthy, vulnerable example or not at all? What can you take away from what Adina and Mario shared to apply to your area, whether you're leading or following?
I'm going to start with adding the part in there, like, is there anything I can clear up for you? I don't think I'm going to use the word stories.
Yeah.
Like that. But yeah, is there anything else is there anything I need to clear up for you? You know?
Yeah, please don't use the word rumble. I hate that freaking word. Yeah, and as a leader, be careful again how you're building trust, because as leaders, I think people are becoming vulnerable with leaders already by allowing them to speak in their lives. And then if you, like I said, you can build trust one marble at a time, one brick at a time, one pocket change at a time, but you can lose it all within a matter of seconds if you hurt someone or if you take that vulnerability and take advantage of it. So be careful with that. And so wrapping up, today's Sunday, so we still have a few spots on our one-on-one coaching. It's not going to start for them. We have some people starting, this is Sunday, so tomorrow, but it's a 10-week course. Make sure you check it out. It is on our website.
Good. Somebody texted me. I was like, I'm going to check the website.
Yeah, check the website. It says one-on-one coaching. You can check that out. It's 10 weeks. We break that up, and it's going to go to the end of the year. But like Adina said, what better way to start the new year than having a focused plan, a direct plan to be successful in 2023. And then, follow us on the socials. Continue to rate us. Give us a great review, a 5-star review. Follow our buddy Jay at Epic Warrior.
Time out. I actually listened to the entire podcast.
Yeah. He I think he did good. This is his first podcast. Why are you laughing?
Okay, because he shared, like, you had posted something and he shared it on Epic Warrior, and I commented, I was like, dude, you need to shave. But it went to Jay.
Oh crap, I didn't see that. You said that?
Yes.
Oh,
I was like, oh, sorry.
Jay, you need to shave, bro. No, I think he's got some good feedback. We had a hiccup with sharing it on Apple and Spotify, but it's
because I know it took me when I looked for it first time, it wasn't on Apple.
Yeah.
But I will say it made me really want to reach out to the people in my life that are first responders and share it with them.
Yeah.
So I can't wait till some of those stories and stuff start coming out.
Yeah.
Because I think it'll be a valuable resource for them.
I think him and I have the same person that he's going to interview. That Jamie and I met him through Jamie. He was a year younger than I am. Became like a special operations in the Marines, and then became a police officer in Midland. But he was wounded in action, I think, in Iraq. He was one of the first guys when after 9/11 hit. But now he's a police officer in Midland, and you hear a little video that they put out of him talking about people that lay their lives on the line and how vulnerable they are, how trusting they are and how much hate they get. But he's like, but if you call 911, I'm still going to show
I'm
up.
still gonna be there. Yeah,
That's crazy.
for sure.
And to know that less than 1% of our population.
Yeah, I heard that in
shows
the
up.
podcast. I was like, huh.
That's crazy.
Yes.
So, anyways, Epic Warrior Podcast, check that out where you listen to your podcast. Jay, good luck. You don't need to shave. Apparently, I do. But guys, just like we said every week, remember we exist for more. We're here to offer more. Don't ever give up. Every single one of us is made for more. We'll talk to you guys later.
Bye, guys.
YouTube, we'll talk to you guys later. And let me check and see if I can get my camera. You guys have a great week. We'll talk to you later.